Hello students, this is Singh here again with my next video on the chapter 15 Our Environment. In my previous video, we had studied about the following topics. They were biodegradable substances, non-biodegradable substances, ecosystem, where we studied about biotic and abiotic components, how they interact with each other and how they form a balance in the nature. Now moving on to our next topic, and that is a food chain. Now we know that food we eat, it acts as a fuel to provide us energy to do the work, and series of organisms, they are feeding on one another, and this series is known as a food chain. As you can see here in the slide also, a food chain is the flow of food energy from one organism to the another organism, and they usually start with a producer and they end with a carnivore. For example, you can see grass is a producer. It's a plant category and it's a producer. They prepare their own food, and this grass is being eaten by the primary consumer, a herbivore, that is deer. Now this primary consumer is further, or a herbivore organism is being further eaten by loin, that is a secondary consumer and also carnivore. In the second example, you can see the grass again is being eaten by insects, and that is the primary consumer, and further it is being eaten by secondary consumer, that is frog. And then after that you find the last one, that is tertiary consumer, and that's a carnivore, that's a snake. And in the third example again you see for the plant category, that is grass, it's your producer, and it is being eaten up by moth, and that moth is a primary consumer which is being further eaten by frog and then snake, and then finally it leads off to hawk. So you have so many steps all around. You can see in a food chain, one after the other, we are starting with a producer and we are ending to the secondary or tertiary consumer. Now this each step or level of the food chain, it forms a trophic level, and the first trophic level in a food chain consists of an autotroph, or the producers. All the plants are producers because they produce the food by the process of photosynthesis. They are actually fixing up the solar energy for consumer. Now the next trophic level is of consumer, and it is being divided up into many steps, starting with your primary consumer, that is a herbivore. Then we have small carnivore, they can call it as a secondary consumer. Then we have a large carnivore, and that is your tertiary consumer. Now if we talk about green plants, we say that they are producers, so they produce the food, and that is why they are known as your producers. Now since the transfer of food energy decreases at every trophic level, and the number of trophic levels are limited and they do not exceed 4 or 5, reason is the same, that green plants, they capture 1% of the energy of sunlight to do the process of photosynthesis, such that their preparation of food, now when they are eaten up by the carnivores, 90% of the energy is used for its growth, body function, and only 10% is available for the next level of consumer. So an average of 10% is left behind, or an average of 10% of the organic matter is present at each step and reaches the next level. Since a very small percentage of energy is available for the organism or for the next step, therefore our food chain generally is made up of 3 or 4 steps. We are losing large amounts of energy at each step, so little amount of energy is left for the next higher levels, or the 4th level you can call it as. Now this is actually known as 10% law. Okay, now coming up to the next topic, and that is our food web. Now it is not restricted that grass is to be eaten by grasshopper. It can be a rabbit also, it can be a deer, or it can be any herbivore. And further, each organism is related to other food chain or several other organisms. So instead of a straight line food chain, the relationship can be a series of branching lines, and we call them as food web. So food web is a group of several interconnected food chains in a food web, and an organism gets food from more than one group of organisms. And a very important thing is that the entire flow of energy in a food chain, or you call it in a food web, is unidirectional. The word unidirectional means that energy captured by autotrophs cannot be reverted to the solar input, or carnivores cannot just release the energy back to the herbivores. Or in simple words, we can say that carnivore cannot be eaten by herbivore, or vice versa. Now coming to the another topic, and we have that is biological magnification. Now in biological magnification, you must have seen that we spray pesticides, insecticides on the crops just to protect them from insects, pests, and these are the chemicals. And the very important thing is that these chemicals are not biodegradable, so they become harmful for plants, and when they are washed in the soil, they are absorbed by the plants, and when they are absorbed by the plants, they are actually being consumed by animals. Now when the plants are being consumed by animals, then you find that this chemical has passed on into our food chain, and it has started progressing ahead in the food chain from one step to the another step. And the very bad point, you can say, or like we are the last one to in the food chain, so we are just collecting all these chemicals inside our body, and when we collect them and store them, we finally are actually the storehouses of these chemicals. And what is happening? That is the progression of the chemicals, or the magnification of the chemicals from the first step to the last step, and this is actually known as biological magnification. So the harmful chemicals like insecticides, pesticides, all these chemicals, they are non-biodegradable, and the concentration starts increasing, and the human beings being the highest in the trophic level, they collect these harmful chemicals maximum in their bodies, and because there is increase in the concentration of these chemicals, we call it as biological magnification. Thank you children. We will come again with the next topic.